I still haven't gone to get the fender yet, but I'm going to go ahead and put this epoxy on while I'm gone. It'll be drying. I'm going to put this in with a syringe in this bracket. Just inject it all around the bracket and just brush it on. I'm just going to use just an acid brush just to brush it around on the bare metal. There's no reason it has to be sprayed, you know, unless you're putting it on as a sealer right before you spray something. But I'm just going to brush it on where it's needed, and that lid's going to get glued over this anyway, so all this here is going to get covered up, and then the cowl panel will sit over this edge so you won't see it either. So go ahead and brush this on and run some in here with the syringe, and then while I'm going to get the fender, it'll be setting up for me so I can come back and get some paint on it. And I'll just have to glue that lid down later. I'll have to do that over cured paint or cured primer, so I'm gonna have to wait till this is dry to put the seam sealer on it. I may wait to paint it till then too. I'll have to just see how it goes. Gonna make sure I get all the bare metal covered. I can paint straight over this later. I don't really have to worry about the finish because it's going to get covered by that plastic cowl panel anyway. I just want to make sure it doesn't rust. That's the main thing. It has to be pretty under here. I'll let this dry for a few minutes and I'll go back over it with almost a second coat just to make sure I got good coverage. Try to get some on the inside that I can, but cavity wax is going to take care of most of that. Now we'll do some of the with the syringe, and then I'll be done with that. By the time I get done with this syringe, the rest of it will be tacked up enough I can put a second coat on the top. Starting to run out now. Going to get what I can. I can't guarantee I'm going to get all of it, but I'm just going to spray it through there and force it around the other side. You can't really get in back here, it's too tight. I'm gonna brush on another coat on the top and I'll be back with the fender. Alright, I've got the plug glued back down. I just had to span it across here, get this entire piece to stay down in the front. So I've got I think that's an 18-inch total length C-clamp there, vice grip. They're here holding this to the back side. I'm still on the metal part of it here, so I'm actually squeezing down 2x4 and to the metal of the cowl there. Same thing here, just right on the edge of it, and there's still steel right below that where the other jaw is contacting. And I had to put another piece on this corner. I was trying to lift up, but it's squeezed out around here enough that it's sealed. I actually just sat here and held this down for just a few minutes after I got it on here just to make sure it didn't lift, and it's stuck now. This sealer's hardening up. It's taking a fingerprint, but it's still not sticky, at least. I'll let that sit here overnight. I've probably put the fender on it 20 times trying to get it to fit. It's just a little bit too high up here, and it won't let the bottom gap close all the way up. So I've sacrificed a little bit of the gap at the top. It's just a little tight here, and it's okay, at least acceptable down there. So I'm gonna have to leave that. I could grind a little bit of this away, but there's not enough there to really make any difference. And the fender also had part of the stamping. There was a step under here that was in the way, so I knocked that up and flattened it. That helped a little bit. But I've got it to where it's going to fit. So what I'm going to do is after I pull this off tomorrow, I'll spray some gold over all this. I'll prep this and get it at least coated in gold. And also the jamb of the fender, put it back on, and this time it can stay. So the next thing I'll be doing is spraying the gold on this and the fender, and then after it's dry, as soon as it's just going to be base coat, so as soon as that's dry, I'm going to stick it on the car or on the truck here, and then go ahead and try to get all these brackets to match up to it. I've just got it matched to the door and twirl bolt in here. And I'm not going to worry about the hood. I've got to have the fender in line with the door no matter what, so we got a little adjustment left and right here for the hood, and then whatever gap I get in the hood along the top edge, that's just going to be what it is. I've got the mirror off, the upper belt molding. Got to pull the bottom molding off. I'll have to reapply tape for that. Need to strip the stripe off with the stripe wheel, and then I'll drop the glass and pull the seal, the run channel seal down. I'm going to wash the door first, and I'll tape up these holes here, but I'll wash everything else before I get ready to drop the glass. So I'll be back when I get ready to do the paint on this, at least on the jamb, and we'll get that fender mounted and try to get all the bracketry to fit, and I'll get it all bolted in, have that finished, and then prep the outside. All right, it's time to spray this. I'm gonna give it a light coat of this adhesion promoter just to make sure it sticks all these places in here that are really hard to sand. Get a couple coats of gold, that'll be good. Got the fender over here ready to go. I've got to get a little bit on the outside face of the front here, so I'm going to also use adhesion promoter here because this thing's really hard to sand. I've got it sanded as best I could, but there's a lot of little nooks and crannies you got to get in that it's really just impossible to do all of it. So after I spray some gold on this, I'll flip it over, and that way it'll only be touching the rack in 2 places on the outside and one here and here. I can spray the entire rest of the surfaces that need to be done at that point. So I'm going to go ahead and get this on the cowl panel and the fender here and give it about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll be mixing up the base while it's flashing off, and then I'll get after spraying this.
Alright, one more coat ought to do it. I'll be back when I'm done with this. Alright, it's sprayed. I used some leftover Ford gold, which is almost identical. Maybe it's just a little bit darker, but can't tell it in here. A little hard to see that. But I just had the tape. I didn't have the tape stuck at a hard line up here. I just had it overlap from here to the bottom corner where it could blow through there a little bit. Now I'm gonna get the bracket bolted in here, and I'll probably wait till I get the fender on and reach through here and tighten this one up once I get it tight to the fender. That way it'll locate it here for me. Just leave it loose, get the fender to fit, and tighten it up to the fender out here. Then I'll tighten that one up and try to reach in there and tighten that one up if I can get to it. If I can, I'll just pull the fender back a little bit, tighten it up. I had just enough paint to get this coated. I don't have a lot under the wheel well. I can put a little bit more in there. This area, this is the only area really that's going to show. I'm going to put a little more in there when I paint the truck with the actual color. But I've got it to where I can get it on the truck at least. We'll go ahead and get the door cleaned up. Need to wash it. Take the stripe off. Get that handle off and the molding off so that I can get this thing ready to blend. But I'll get the fender up there, fit to it, and then I'll paint both of these together. Alright, I got the door stripped. Took the molding off with some wire, and then I ran the stripe wheel over that to get the tape off. Same thing on the pinstripe. Just ran the stripe wheel off, that off with the stripe wheel. Pulled the, I ran the glass down after I got the handle out. It's just 3 nuts in there. This one's a little hard to get to because there's no access hole. There's a hole for that one, and a hole through the outside of the door for that. But this one you got to reach in behind the regulator without taking the glass out. If you want to do it with the hole that's in the door, you got to take the glass out. Now, dropped the glass, pulled the run channel weather strip down here, and just laid it in. So it runs all the way down into the door. So I'm just going to lay it in so I can paint this edge here and just mask it off. Same thing here. I'll tape along here. Just leave it inside the door here through the window opening. No reason to pull it all the way out. Then I'll fill this in with paper. Next thing is going to be to run 1000 grit disc over all this. Then I'll hit the other parts I can't get to with a gray pad. And then I'll get the fender on it. I may sand the door before I get the fender on there because I've got to wait for this plug that goes in this hole right here, this rubber plug, little baffle flap for the drain. I've got to wait on that, and if I put the fender on now, I can't get in there to that. I don't think. I might be able to, but I'm not certain. So I might go ahead and work on this till I get that part. Then I'll put the fender in. But either way, I'll be back for either this or I'll show you the fender on and final fitment on that. Alright, I'm ready to get the fender on. I was able to pick up this flap today. Just snaps in the top of the cowl here. And it's got a little weighted valve here to let water run through. And also to seal this off for the fresh air intake so that you got some air being pulled through here into the blower. And this seals this off. It also allows it to drain. Now that that's on, I was able to get this bracket on top of it. I left this off until I had this flap in that I got today. So now that I have that in, I've got this bracket just loosely bolted where I can adjust it to the fender. Once I get the fender to fit to the door and bolt it in the front here, I'll be able to snug this down to the fender and then reach through here and tighten these two down. This one's going to be a little hard to get to, I think, but I'm going to try to get to it with the fender in place. That way I don't have to take it back off. Door's completely stripped. Just needs to be sanded down. And window opening masked and handle opening, and I'll be able to paint this. I'll have it masked off while I get the fender and sealer and base coat, and then I'll pull the paper off and get some color on the door and then clear all of it. I'm going to work on getting this on. I'm probably going to have to push this bumper out with a ram in here. I've pushed it out a little bit by hand as much as I could, but I'm probably going to have to come in here on this bracket and push this part of the bumper bar out at least into this pocket of this bumper cover. So I'm probably going to go ahead and get the ram and get it somewhere down on the frame down there and push this out. Give me some extra clearance to get that bolt in, and that needs to come out anyway. So I'm going to do that before I drop the fender in, and then I'll be back when I got that all together. We'll get ready to start putting all the pieces in. I'd like to get everything bolted back in as far as the coolant tank and intake and all that, and battery tray. Have all that in place, and all I'll be left with is putting the hood on it and getting the paint done. I'm definitely going to put the hood on before I paint it to make sure everything's aligned and I don't drop the hood on the fender when I go to install it after painting it. So it's all going to get assembled, and then I'll paint it afterwards. Alright, fender's on. Everything lined up really well. The only thing I had to file was the long bracket that came off the firewall back there, where it met up to this stud right here. This stud was a little bit too far back, so I filed that hole a little bit back into the right of the truck, back this direction. And then I pulled the stud over just a hair, just to angle it forward just a little bit. And everything else went right in. These bolts here on the side, these three, that one there. This matched up perfectly. Didn't have to adjust anything there. Went ahead and threw the wipers and the cowl back on the cover here. Got the air cleaner and the overflow bottle in. Went ahead and put the park light in just because it's just part of the grill. Didn't have to worry about masking it off anyway. And since I've got to mask the grill off, I'm just going to go ahead and mask around the headlight too. Just push the tape in underneath the fender. That way that's already in and done. I did push the bumper out a little bit with the ram. It's still back some. You can see it's not flush with the fender here. And that's because they had hit something here a while back and pushed the bumper back a little bit, but we're not going to do that right now. If he wants to fix all that, I told him we're going to have to replace the bumper bar and the air dam, because it's got some damage down here existing, and of course this right here from what they did, and then I think this was part of the accident. I'm not really sure, but most likely it was. But I told him I was just going to get it where he could drive it, and this right here is just cosmetic. So next thing is going to be to get the hood on it, make sure it's aligned to the fender. I've left this bolt right here. This one's tight just to hold it still. I'll loosen it, and these two were loose, and these two were loose. I've got those marked with tape just to remind me to tighten those up after I get the front gap here set for the hood. Once I set that and tighten this one down, I'll go back and tighten those four up. They're just finger tight, so the fender will slide around. I'm going to sand the outside of this with 400 with a DA, and I'll get in these grooves and body lines with a red pad. And same thing back here, but I'll use 1000 grit on the DA, dry, and then I'll get all in the pockets around the edges and inside the door handle with gray pad. That'll be the next thing. I need to wipe this off again since I've been handling it, get all the fingerprints and dirt off of it. And I've left the inner fender liner out so that I can tape along here. It actually overlaps the outside of this step a little bit, so I want to be able to tape in here and paint this edge without that thing in the way. So I'll put that in later. But everything else is in. I just need to get that inner fender in after I paint it, and once I get the paint job done, I can cut and buff whatever I need to, and apply some new molding tape to the chrome strip and stripe it, and just put everything back together. It'll be good to go. And it may come back for a bumper in the front, I'm not sure yet, but next thing is going to be the paint job. Okay, I've had a lot of trouble getting this hood to fit. This hinge over here I think is okay, and that one I had to straighten the back mount a little bit, right back in the rear pivot back there. And I think it's fine, should be. But there's a huge gap here, I probably got a 1/2 inch gap. I can get my whole finger in it here. And it's just about flush back here in the back when I close it. And this side over here, same thing, it's overlapping right on the edge of this fender. And I know I've got the fender in the right place on the truck, and all this fits. I know everything is forward. It's almost like the hinge is pushed back. I can't get it to rotate over this way to close this gap up over here on this side. So what I've looked at, and I may not be able to show you, but I'm going to try to get under the truck with a light here and see if I can explain this. But this slot, that slot right there, that oval slot with the light shining right next to the body mount. See if I can get my hand on it. This slot right here, right there, is about, see if I can get you lined up to it. Hard to tell that wire in the way, but it's further to the left of the truck. It's actually back here past this body mount, more that way. And on the other side, the slot is about a 1/4 inch to the left of the other side of its body mount. So it looks like this thing slid over. I don't see any slide marks or any clean spots where this would have moved. But front end's out of square for sure. And it sort of makes sense because this side got hit so hard. And at this mount here, this is what was holding it back. So it looks like it shifted this aluminum radiator support over. I got the tram gauge out and I set it. I took the bolt out of the rear brace back there. That's where I'm centered. I'm coming down to the center of this bolt. I don't want to take this bolt back out just yet. Centered on that. And I could have used a locator hole, but this one's just not quite lined up to it, so I'm using the bolt. Pull out of that. I'm going to go across this other one. I have to assume that's in the right place because that bracket fits just right to the fender. And we're nowhere close over here. That's about how far off it is. So looks like I'm going to have to take the bolts out of the tops of the fenders just to free it up, and probably the bolts, either these two bolts or those two, take those out. Probably just take this out since there's only one left to do, so this is free to move. And I'll have to loosen the mounts on the frame down there where this radiator support is bolted in, and I'll try to get in the bottom somewhere and pry it over. I don't think I'll be able to knock it over, but I'll have to get this piece, this radiator support here, to move over, and then I'll just push this fender over to match it, and just pull this one out, because the front of the truck is definitely not square. So I'm gonna get it squared up, and then I'll work on the hood from there. Alright, I stuck the bar in that slot I showed you underneath and just pried against the body mount. You can see in there I've got right next to that big washer where the bolt goes through, about probably a 1/4 inch to 3/8 clean spot there. I can focus on that. Anyway, I've slid the thing over about a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch to the right side. Just pulling on the pry bar this direction up in that slot, prying against the body mount. I'm going to leave that loose and get the hood back on it and see where we are with that. This way I can go back in and adjust it. I can go to the other side and pry back if I went too far. I doubt I did though. I just don't see how it could have moved and not left a mark, but it's definitely out of square. I've got it pretty close now. We're going to put the hood back on. I'll be right back when that's on and see how close I am. Alright, I think I've got it as close as I'm going to get it. I was able to move that over a pretty good bit. I got the front as square as I could. Decent gap here. This is probably what it looked like before, but the hood had been shifted over slightly, so this looks pretty normal from what I can remember these trucks looking like. And this side gap's a little bit wider here, and I couldn't do anything else about it. I think it's just the fender. You can't bring the fender up to it because this mount mounts to the fender. The hinge does, so it's just going to follow it. I had to shim the front of the latch, the front of the hinge there, to get this to drop back. I'll pop it up and show you that. I've got about 1/8 of an inch shim in the front here. Something's up with this hinge, and the hood's also tweaked in here a little bit. I just can't get it completely lay down flat in the back, so I had to shim the front of this so that I could rock it back This actually rocks the back corner that's hanging off the hinge. It rocks it down because it was sitting up proud about 1/8 of an inch or so. So that's got that flush in the back, and since this bolt is about halfway between these two, I've got half as much shim right there so that I don't bow this too much. That shim's not really doing anything except for bending the hinge, or preventing bending the hinge. You can see the shim there, behind in the back there. But I had to do that to get the hood to drop down in the back corner. I'm sticking way up right here, so that's got it as close as it's gonna get. And we're just trying to save this truck, so that should be good enough. Once I get some paint on it, that's actually gonna build up this edge slightly, take up some of the gap. I'll put some thick clear there, that'll help. It's essentially done now. I've got to go back in and tighten up the body mounts under there now that I've got everything straight. And if anything moves, I'll just make adjustments from that, but I don't think it's going to move at all. If anything, it's going to pull this slightly down towards the frame of the truck. Just need to sand everything now. I'll be right back with the paint. I ended up having to take this off to get to where I could see everything in there. I'm going to put that back. That goes along the radiator. Be back with the paint in just a second.